Okay, so this morning, as we basically are at the end of semester, I'll go through implementation and I'll focus on specific areas because when you look at the outline, you realize the outline has a very wide range of topics dealt with in the implementation stage. So I just want to zero in on some of the more critical points. So in terms of what we want to achieve this morning, to look at the purpose of implementation, which I believe students of management at this stage would know, whether it's implementing a financial policy, financial strategies, right? Whether you did your public sector management and you're looking at government policies, right? Government initiatives. If you did marketing, if your specialty is marketing, if you have a marketing plan, a marketing strategy, how you're going to implement. So the same concept applies for strategy. And I would reinforce the point. I don't know if your marketing lecturer, Dr. Knight, would have told you, but when I did marketing many years ago with Maxine McLean, she always said that, some texts actually say strategic management is basically the same thing as strategic marketing, because the concepts are so very close. So the concepts are really very integrated. So those who are specializing in marketing should find strategy pretty easy. So the second thing is to look at the resources involved in implementation, looking at the importance of gaining a competitive advantage through your human resources. So I will urge you to pay particular attention to that because you would know from doing HR and doing OB that one of the most critical things that could prevent effective implementation would be actually your human resources and the extent to which your human resources can facilitate that process. And the linkage to RBV in relation to competitive advantage. So there should be no one in this room who does not know what RBV is. Because we talked about RBV in week 1, week 2, week 4, week 5. So everybody in here should be experts in RBV. And then finally, how to achieve effective implementation. So this is just a quote that pretend that every single person you meet has a sign around his or her neck that says, "Make me feel important." And I think they're using this quote for the purpose of saying, in implementing strategy, you utilize a whole set of different resources. And we know the resources that an organization would have available to it would be what type of resources? Your human resources, physical resources, your technical or technological resources. Which one you missed out? There are two. Right, your financial resources, natural resources, and then there's one that is a critical resource nowadays that people are mindful of, and the information itself as a resource, especially with the advent of the advanced technology. So we're saying strategy formulation does not guarantee effective implementation or success because it is really up to the human resource and having people, managers, supervisors, and staff working together to do that. So we'll just do a distinguishing between formulation and implementation. And remember the three phases: strategy formulation, strategy implementation, and strategy evaluation. So we're saying formulation focuses on forces before, positions forces before action, whereas implementation manage forces after action. Right? And then we are saying formulation focuses on effectiveness, implementation on efficiency. What's efficiency? And to some extent, implementation, I would add, also deals with effectiveness. What's efficiency? Well, be more specific. Efficiency, how does it differ from effectiveness? Effectiveness deals with well, but something more specific. You said how well. Effectiveness is achieving your goal. What's efficiency? How you do it? Be more specific then. Stop whispering. What is it? Go ahead. In the time it takes, what else? And the costs involved. In other words, does it take a long time? So I can have a goal. By the 15th of December, each student in this class will sit the BSP final exam. That's the first goal. But somebody, if it was possible, could miss the exam and send it later if it was possible. So you would have done the exam, but you would not have met the goal of doing it on the 15th, right? So if I had a project to do, you had to submit a project as other courses would have. A project could be due on the 10th of November, but you submit it on the 15th. You submitted it, but you missed the time frame. Sorry. So if you were effective, you would have submitted it on time, right? So efficiency would all need to do how much time it took you actually in preparing. For some students, they could have taken 50 hours, some students 60 hours, some students 80 hours. So how much time did it take you to complete your project? So the students that take less hours, that are more succinct in their study or take good notes, are much more efficient, because the more time you take to work on a project, you know the problem of opportunity cost. So the more time you take on one project, it means that you have to neglect something else, which is what students do around this time. They're juggling projects. So they determine, or which class I will skip this week, which tutorials I will not bother to go to. And you determine what is important. Well, I'm glad you came, because this morning session is going to be very important, actually. And then we're looking at the focus. Formulation is primarily an intellectual process. You're just coming with ideas and thoughts and strategies, whereas implementation is operational. You're implementing. And that's why the human resource is so critical. And then we are also saying formulation requires intuition, some kind of judgment, being analytical, whereas implementation deals with motivation, leadership, because the critical thing about implementation is the people issue, right? So again, implementation, folks, if you're to do well in a question like this, you have to know your human resources management. Go back to your human resources management notes and your organizational behavior notes, maybe your IR notes if you did IR. It's largely about people and getting people to be motivated and benefiting from people, the capabilities of people. So we'll touch on that very shortly. So we can. Oh, this is another important point, folks, now come back a bit. Now, for the purpose of your exam, one of the key things you need to be mindful of, what type of organization we are talking about, right? Because the exam is going to be a case, so most of the questions are going to be linked. So you need to determine up front, is it manufacturing? Is it finance? Is it tourism? Is it technology? Is it distributing products? You see the point I'm making? Because the type of business would influence your analysis and would influence your recommendations. I repeat, the type of business the context of the business that you bring to answering questions would influence the type of analysis you bring and the type of recommendations. So for example, when you're looking at your CPM or when you're looking at your financial ratios, pay particular attention to the type of business, right? Because that would influence your analysis. As we said before, if you see a small differential between your current ratio and quick ratio, you know that has to be a kind of service business. They don't carry a lot of inventory, right? So you don't get into answering that this seems strange that the company does not have inventory and maybe there might be a problem, right? Or what some students did in previous exams, they would put up their hand and say, sir, is this an error? There's very little difference between the current and quick ratio because they're anticipating that you're taking out inventory. You understand, Callista? So if you think in the normal accounting thing, a quick ratio is your current assets minus your inventory. So if you go with that thinking in a literal sense, you're looking at that when you take out inventory, there's got to be this major difference between your current and quick ratio. But in certain businesses, actually, if your services and the .com businesses, you're not going to find any big variance between that. So you've got to pay attention to those things. And these are just an example of some of the activities in implementation. Altering sales territories, right? You want to alter sales territories, adding new departments, closing facilities, hiring new employees, cost control procedures, modifying advertising strategies, building new facilities. So even in a number of these bullet points, I hope you pick out the different areas of strategy and corporate coming out there, right? Because when we say altering sales territories, what kind of issues or strategies are linked here? Sorry, market development. It could be market development. It could be market penetration too, depending on what it is. What else could it be? Sales territories. It could be linked to forward value chain too, because the outbound logistics is about sales, getting things to market. You understand? You're developing a market, penetrating or developing because you want to increase sales, you see. Closing facilities, that relates to, right, it could be divestiture, right? Could be liquidation if you're shutting down the whole facility. Hiring new employees speak for itself. Cost control procedures, again, that could relate to financial ratios. Cost control procedures could relate to value chain analysis. Modifying advertising strategies relates to marketing, which is found in the, right, which section of the value chain? Advertising is found where in the value chain? Sorry? Which part of primary? Outbound, right, in the outbound section. Building new facilities, well, that is just adding to your plant and equipment. And then you have objectives. So the thing is, you have objectives. All organizations would have objectives which set up the basis for things they would want to do. So these are some critical activities. You have your objectives, your strategic objectives, your human resource objectives. You have your policies and strategies. So out of that, you would have your strategies, different types of strategies, whether differentiation strategies, cost leadership strategies, focus strategies, right? These are strategies a company might want to utilize. They might have intermarket penetration, market development, backward integration. So a company determines all of the types of strategies. And at implementation now, you're just taking your resources that we mentioned and seeking to implement. And the rewards, they are also the organizational structure is important. Does the structure accommodate it? Does the culture of the organization accommodate it? And then the kind of rewards and incentives. Why are rewards and incentives important for employees? To motivate them, right? So to motivate them. So if you're answering that, you can get into a discussion the importance of motivation, and you can mention a couple motivational theories that might have to be considered. And somebody can give me 2 motivational theories that motivate. Motivational theories that can be used to help you to understand issues of motivation. Maslow, Herzberg, and Herzberg dealt with this theory. The 2-factor theory that looked at hygiene factors and the motivators, right? And that are the things that motivate. What things motivate people? Yes, I agree. Herzberg doesn't say that though. So you need to indicate that, there's some dispute as to why money motivates. But there's an acronym that we use called WARGAR, WARGAR. That speaks to the motivators, which are work itself. The A is achievement, R, recognition, G, growth. The next A, advancement, and the last R, responsibility, WARGAR. 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 As I told you before, studying by acronyms help you to remember things. So I developed that, I used that acronym from the time I was an undergrad student many years ago, and I never forgot it. So these are the types of resources, as we said, your physical, your human, your financial, technological, as you said, also your environmental resources, and I said information as a resource. So one of the critical things that could be looked at would be the importance of linking pay to performance. right? So why might you want to link pay to performance in an organization to get people ultimately to achieve the objectives? What's the importance of pay for performance? Productivity, right? It can increase productivity, and what else? It's a good way of monitoring things that people are doing. Who benefits? Sorry? Who benefits from that? It goes both ways, you're correct. Both the employee and the employer, because if your productivity is increased, the organization is likely to increase its sales and profitability, and the pay for performance means as your performance improves, you also would benefit in addition to your base salary. So both the employee and the employer could benefit, I put, from well-structured linking pay to performance schemes. So you have profit share, gain sharing, etc. So these are some things that are used to help to motivate. Some issues now that are critical also when you're implementing will be resistance to change. And this is where your OB comes into being, right? Organizational behavior. Why do people resist change? Anybody can tell me, why do people resist change? Right in the back. They're scared. They're scared. What else? Right, some people don't like, they're very conservative. They like the status quo. I'm comfortably weighted. One more. Why people resist change? Sorry? They're locked into their old traditional ways of doing it. So they're fearful of change. No problem. Trust, it could be low trust. You don't trust management. So why do you want me to change? So low trust environments are not amenable to change also. Right? And you're talking about anxiety, as you said, fear. Economic loss means that it might disadvantage me, might lose my job. Right? It brings a set of uncertainty and the status quo. That's what you said. Some people just like it the way things are, and that's the status quo. So it might be a personality thing, or people who are, as you say, mature in the workplace, they're due to retire, so you don't want anything that has the potential to threaten your job. The other thing is a supportive culture. So you cannot answer a question on implementation without speaking to issues of culture, because culture is very important. So when companies merge, if somebody initiated horizontal integration, you could have issues when two companies merge. So what's the issue when two companies merge? If you have horizontal integration, you buy the company, what might be some of the issues you might be confronted with? Yes? Sorry? Look at flow. So what are some of the issues? Yes. Right. So not only have a seat, and you're correct, because I had flow, and the meal was excellent and perfect. So it could be also technically integrating the different systems, which I suspect happened. They integrated the two technical systems, and it created a whole set of technical problems, you see. And it could be cultures, clashing cultures. That people from line might be angry with the management and feeling that we were unfair because technically flow took them over. So it could be really clashing cultures. Sorry, you think so? No, it's the other way around. That line took over flow? No. Oh, yes, that is true. Yes, 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 that is true. That is true. Yes. But some other company didn't take it over. Right, and then kept, right, yes, right. So is this, so, but another company I think was supposed to take over recently? Everything correct, right? So Liberty Bell, which is an American company, right? Bought over everything now. So it's actually new. They haven't publicized it, but the whole thing, but that's business, you see, buying out. So what strategies were they employing? These strategies were, what kind of strategies? What kind of strategies were these? Sorry? What kind of defensive strategies there were, if there were? What happened initially? You had Lime and you had Columbus. Initially, what was it? It was vertical, horizontal. Sorry. But what was the first one? It was a merger. It was a defensive strategy. So it was initially supposed to be a merger between equal partners. But then, what did Lime do then? Lime bought out, which means that Lime engaged in horizontal integration. And then now, with the, you say it was Bell, Liberty, Liberty Bell, what kind of strategy did they initiate? Huh? Horizontal integration, they came now and bought out a competitor. But initially it was supposed to be a merger, and then it ended up with two horizontal activities. So when you read the literature, actually, most of the strategies imposed by big companies as they grow is actually taking over companies, horizontal integration. Yes, you were saying? But as I said, there are many examples of strategy happening all around us. Oh, but there were some other strategy. Sorry. The question is whether it was an example of related diversification with Lime and Flow. In what sense? But what's the diversification? In which area? Well, but diversification means they would have gone into something different. It would be something different, you see, right? Yeah, it would be something different. I think there was diversification. There was something technical they did that I would agree with for diversification that Lime wanted from Flow. What did Flow have that Lime didn't have? That's a very good question. The fiber optics. So there was diversification because what the fiber optics then would allow Lime to do, what was the benefit of the fiber optics? Speed and higher quality videos, higher quality TVs, higher quality movies. Right, so it was actually going into a totally different market of fiber optics and high definition TV. So it was actually a form of diversification related to going to high definition. You could only get high quality definition TV when you go fiber optics. So Lime actually was behind in the world market, and they realized by going with Flow, they could actually come up to par in terms of laying fiber optics. So if you remember this scenario, all through the Caribbean, Lime had started on a small scale laying out its fiber optics, but it wasn't aggressive about it, whereas Flow had it laid out all through the region. And then Lime determined that there's no sense us trying to go and lay these mains all over and digging up the road, which might have been disrupted. So let's merge and see that we can have both. So as I said, culture is going to be something very, very important. The culture of management, how they pay, how they work. But there was something else that happened to the way in which Lime and Flow operated. What changed after the merger in terms of how the business was structured? Anybody can remember? Other than poor service. Other than poor service. So where would that fall in the value chain? Where would the poor service fall in the value chain? Primary and in the after sales service, right? After sales service. So in fact, they started to bundle. Right? That's an important point. One of the things they started offering actually would have been these bundles that you can get your TV, your internet, landline, and cell services all integrated. So who were they trying to target as a competitor when they tried to get into the bundling and including TV? Who were they targeting? They were targeting cable TV providers. Cable TV providers and the pirates. The many people who would set up these satellite things and pirate and steal channels from people. So like the local TV stations that had cable, they were actually trying to target to say, well, look, you don't need cable. All you need is access to the internet, and you will be able to get a much better and higher quality service. So in the case of Barbados, they were actually targeting CBC, which had the cable system for a while. Now, the human resources, as I said, is one of the most critical areas, and we're saying HR managers are responsible for this, and looking at ways in which people work, how they're allocated responsibilities, etc. So there are a number of issues looking at assessing staff needs and costs, and I'm sure you would appreciate the importance then of monitoring staff needs and costs, because why is it relevant? Somebody give me the analysis. Why to assess staff needs and costs would be something very important. What's the relevance of assessing staff needs and costs? Excellent. Right, excellent. So because of that, the company then has to, since you're concerned about that, and what she mentioned just now, another name for what she mentioned is the business model. So why would this, is this information important for your business model? Monitoring your costs and revenues, why is that important? Why is that important? Yes, for implementation. Now, we talked about the importance of assessing staff needs and costs. And she said because the company must pay attention to its business model, it needs to monitor its revenue growth, its cost, so it can make a profit. So what, in addition, will be some of the critical things that are important for you to be paying attention to these things? What does it signal to management that they might need to do? What kind of things will management need to do? To manage its costs. Right? Hire your staff so you don't have high turnover, because there is a cost to high turnover. What else? What other things management might be interested in doing to make sure that this information might be helpful to it? Right, so she's saying then, one of the things you want to be able to do is to hire staff who would have the distinctive competencies, because when they have the distinctive competencies, you can assume that they're high performers, they operate very efficiently, they're very effective, and the critical thing then, when they have distinctive competencies related to what? What's the most critical thing from a strategy point of view when they have the distinctive competencies? You're better likely to get a competitive advantage because guy in the blue. You say because of these distinctive competencies, you're likely to gain a competitive advantage because this side. Because anybody. Because it means that it would rare, not easily substituted, not easily imitated. And because of that, your competitors can come and look all they want to look, but they cannot do it the ways in which we do it. Excellent. And ESOP is employee share ownership programs. Employee share ownership, which means as the company grows and is profitable, it actually offers shares to the employees, which means the employees become part owners of the business. Employee share ownership programs. And this is something that Busy Williams in Barbados does nearly every year. God does it too. That's wonderful. Childcare policies, again, why are childcare policies important for an implementation phase? Why is it important? Childcare policies, right? If you have staff, especially young mothers with children, when they are working, especially if they have strange hours, like working shift and working night, you don't want them worrying about their children. So if you have childcare facilities, it has shown it actually helps to facilitate motivation and satisfaction and performance. And work-life balance means you need to balance, you know, working hard and still enjoying life. So I want to come back a bit. Let me see. So I want to go back to just emphasize the point about the human resources issues as we discussed about tacit knowledge, distinctive competencies, being motivated, performance incentive schemes. Um, Integration of theory is going to be something that will permeate the exam, meaning that as you talk about the importance of the human resource and the being motivated, high performing, having competencies, as we did, you would need to reinforce it by the theory, which is which theory you would utilize, as we did just now. That you talked about rare, not easily imitated, substituted. That was right. It relates to the RBV, the resource-based view. And one of the things I think you should know going into the exam is conceptually how the RBV differs from the IO, the industrial and organization perspective. You should be able to appreciate those distinctive differences. That one deals with the internal resources and the other one deals with the external resources. And then again, the challenges of motivating, meeting the needs of your employees, because if they are dissatisfied, they're not going to perform. If they're part of your sales force, they're not going to be motivated. If they don't see something in it for them, why are they going to be motivated? So you give them your ownership plan or performance incentive schemes is to make employees feel they are part of the institution. So they feel driven to increase sales because it's something in it for them. Okay? So all of the theories about goal setting theory, right, Herzberg theory, expectancy theory are some theories that can help you to explain, why motivating the employees are important. But also leadership, there's an important issue of leadership, and leadership that is provided to show you care about people and you want to help people grow. The importance of training and development. We didn't mention that just now. But training and development is also an important function that staff members need to be trained and developed because training and development is a foundation to eventually developing your competencies. So when you read your notes and the chapter, you will realize that when it doesn't start with distinctive competencies, you first would have your core competencies, and your core competencies then would eventually be developed into distinctive competencies. Right? But you have a competence, a core competence, which is related to an area of specific work. Right? So in each profession then, so if you're in a bank, a commercial bank, there are core competencies related to a bank because core competencies are not necessarily generic. Some are. So in a commercial bank, traditional commercial bank, you find a set of core competencies and eventually distinctive competencies. If you work for a real estate agency, again, the real estate agency will have its own core competencies and eventually distinctive competencies. If you work in a car dealership, the car dealership will have its own core competencies and also eventually distinctive competencies. If you work in a beauty salon, the beauty salon will have its own core competencies and ultimately distinctive competencies. So please remember that distinction, that the distinctive and core competencies are profession specific or organization specific. If you work in a medical field, if you're a doctor, a pediatrician, a gynecologist, an internal specialist, the core competencies and distinctive competencies relate to specific areas of the work. Right? And as you know, the point about the tacit knowledge is important also. When you're speaking about distinctive competencies, you have to mention about tacit knowledge and the importance of tacit knowledge to organizations. All right, any questions on implementation? Any questions? Anything you want me to go back over, or you're quite comfortable? As I said, you need to mention culture, the importance of culture. Why is culture important, especially for organizations that horizontally integrate, organizations that merge, right? Even for culture, as organizations expand in market development, there's an important issue of culture, even for staff. You know, if you have managers going to work in other countries, they need to be mindful of the cultural differences. So you can remember the video that we had where companies are going international. All right. No questions, everybody is good? Okay.